here in Williston, back to the territory I traveled to an awful lot when I was in previous 2 jobs. My name is Maria Efforts Hansen, and I work with the Department of Commerce as the Economic and Community Development Lead. Not too often do I get to be the MC for my boss also, so I am pretty happy to be able to put them on the spots for a little bit today. You heard from James Lamont earlier about the overall commerce vision, and with the fantastic panel we have sitting in front up here, we'll get a little deeper dive into some of the specific areas of commerce, workforce, economic development and finance, and UAS, and some of the opportunities we have not only for primary sector, but I have the privilege of also working with community development. And you heard earlier, most everything we do in North Dakota is about community. And so I'm really excited to work with a governor who is very strong on the community with the Main Street Initiative, but then also with a Commerce Commissioner now, Mr. Lawan, who has put community as one of his top priorities. So it is an exciting time to be with Commerce. I've been here officially a year full-time plus some, but I've not young, as you can tell. I've been around a few years, spent a lot of time in economic development and community development, oil and gas, and communications. So this has been fun to be back to the roots of doing good, and Commerce mission, of course, is to do that, to improve the quality of life while attracting, retaining, and expanding our wealth. So with that, I'm going to kind of jump around a little bit, and I'm going to start with Mr. Teigen. I always say his name. I really should get that right, considering he is my boss. Josh is originally from North Dakota, and when I asked these guys to give me, what do you want to accomplish today? What is the thing that you want to do? And he kind of went around it, and he says an objective is to showcase commerce as approachable thought leadership partner for every community and every industry. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Josh to give us an overview of EDNF and where we are today.
Thanks, Maria, and good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me here. As she mentioned, my name is Josh Teigen. I'm the Director of the Economic Development Finance Division for Commerce. I've been with Commerce for about 1.5 years, and in this role for about 6 months. So when James Lamont moved on to be the Commissioner, I slid up into his former role. So really excited to be here. As it relates to the Economic Development and Finance Division for Commerce, the first kind of systematic change that you guys will hopefully notice, and is a theme that's been talked about today, is kind of the braiding together of economic development and community development. I think for a long time, North Dakota has been viewed as one of the greatest places in the world to work, but how do we make our communities equally as great to live in? Because economic development without the community behind it is somewhat of a declining return on investment, and simultaneously, if we build great communities, that can drive economic development. So and when we look back at the last year and some of the challenges that's created, there's tons of opportunity as well. The world of remote work allows us to build great communities and then use that to attract people that then can be employed at just about any company across the world, and they can say, hey, you know, Williston's a great place to live. I want to live here and I want to work for Amazon or Microsoft. You don't have to live in a specific location for that role. So I think community development has become more of a focus, more of a forefront, and a way to kind of backdoor economic development as well. So that's one key theme. The other themes that you'll hear talked about from the state level down is resiliency and diversification. When you strip out construction and home sales, things like that, 70% of North Dakota's economy is oil and soil. And obviously out here in the western part of the state, you guys have been on a roller coaster for, it's been more than just the latest boom. It's been 30, 40, 50 years of roller coaster. And whether it's really high wages or really high construction costs, there's really never been a time of just equilibrium. And so I think when we look to diversify the economy away from this, 70% dependence on two industries, that's really important, but also the resiliency piece of it is equally important, which focuses on how do we take our oil and gas industry, how do we take our agriculture industries, and how do we make them resilient moving forward, where we continue to diversify, but we're not setting those things aside. And James touched on it in his presentation, which is the challenges with the new administration coming in. A lot of that focus has been around regulation, but I think North Dakota is uniquely positioned to be at the forefront of innovation in both energy and ag, where we can say you can't regulate an industry away essentially overnight. We have to have innovation meet it halfway. And so we're quick to celebrate a lot of the innovation that's happened in the agriculture space in North Dakota, but we're going collaboratively to Washington, D.C. officials to say, you can't regulate oil and gas away. How can North Dakota position itself to be on the innovative forefront, to be cleaner, safer, more efficient in our energy production, and that will really propel us forward and make that energy economy resilient. So those are a couple of kind of the three themes that you'll hear from an economic development and finance division, as well as the incorporation of community development as well. So with that, I'll turn it back to Maria, but just very happy to be with you guys today.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. And in the Economic Development and Finance Division, which Josh is the director of right now, we have, as you heard talk about finance, and in that we have the Development Division, which has a variety of resources and availability, and I'll have Josh touch on some of that in a little bit. But then on the economic side and community development side, we cover primary sector and community development. That includes advanced manufacturing, value-added agriculture, of course, energy, and in that energy, there is new energy is what I tend to call it, where we're taking a look at all of the things that are coming up that augment and continue our traditional energies of oil, gas, and coal. There is no way that we would say that it's just one or the other in North Dakota. The opportunity is immense, where we see people in the new energy sitting right alongside an oil well, working together to create a data center. There's just so much opportunity. There was just today an announcement about another opportunity that's going to come our way that I'm super excited that hopefully we will hear more about in the future months. But then an additional one that we have focused a considerable amount of time on in North Dakota is the UAS industry, and we heard how Tioga has tackled into that with the drone camps. I know Williston in this region has a lot of opportunity with that, and today you're going to hear specifically about that as a panel, but we are lucky to have Courtney here who can do an introduction and a little bit of a brief overview of how the state is tackling UAS.
Thank you, Maria. So when I came to Commerce, I actually started off working with intellectual property development, ideas specifically coming out of the university system. And as we were looking at these ideas that were coming out of the university system, we were finding that a lot of these ideas have a tie to this new tech, this UAS industry, these unmanned autonomous systems. And those are the things we see flying through the air, but then we're also talking about ground-based systems as well, right? We're going to autonomy. And as a state that has a focus in oil and gas, in agriculture, in the things that we have, these are all industries that their growth is going towards autonomy. And so it's a really exciting place for me to be moving into, to be working with the growth of autonomy. One of my big priorities as a state right now is to say, how do we take the prestige and the sophistication that we have in this state and get it out to the national and international level? As I'm learning this industry, we are technically advanced in everything that we're doing as a state. On a state level, on a local level, we are very sophisticated. But we need to get that message out there. We're already a leader. We have one of the 7 test sites in the United States here in North Dakota for this beyond visual line of sight, which you guys are seeing the expansion of that now into Williston, which is an exciting time, and we'll talk a lot more later when we talk through with the panel that we have coming. But that expansion is extremely exciting. So I'm happy to be moving into this space, but I have to say I'm also a little bit sad, or was sad, to move into this space because many of you in this room I met during the pandemic response. When the pandemic hit, I'm sure most of you recognize that a lot of commerce put our time and energy, instead of the continued growth in major industry, we turned in the state and started working one-on-one with all of the businesses at the local level. And those of us who are normally in primary sector development had the opportunity to do that and to work with each of you as individuals, to work with the community, even if it was via a screen. And one of the things I love about where we're going right now is we are going to continue that, as Josh said, as Maria said, to take that into the future of how we do our development, to strengthen those ties with the communities, and meet each of you to see where you're seeing development, how we augment what you're already doing. I've been really impressed. Maria didn't say this when she introduced me, but I've lived in a bunch of different states. My husband's training has moved us all around the country. He's a physician, but he's originally from North Dakota. I'm originally from Montana. I've seen a lot of different things in a lot of different places, and I can tell you we're not choosing to call North Dakota home because my husband happens to be from here. We chose to call North Dakota home because we've been so impressed by the resiliency, by the initiative, by the sophistication of this state, while still maintaining connectivity and that ability to work together and get things done quickly. When I go to the national level and I'm talking with people about what we're doing in North Dakota, they say, wow, I didn't know you had all of that there. And they say, wow, I can't believe how quickly you guys can get things done. So this is a really exciting time for me to be moving into this industry, as Williston is specifically growing in UAS right now with that new focus here. And the other beautiful thing about a state focus on UAS is it's not just the autonomous systems, it's also all of the surrounding tech that goes with those systems. It's the data, it's the processing, it's the application of that technology to every industry we have in the state. As I was driving here today, I passed 3 different vehicles that said something on it about UAS, about surveillance systems, about safety and security, and they were all tying back to this industry, this autonomy, and this autonomy that is not taking jobs away, it is instead making things safer and giving jobs in other places. So now we don't have to have people climbing up to the top of that windmill to check those blades. We got someone to fly up there. So that's a different job created that's a lot safer. So I'm very excited about the growth. I'm very excited for our panel later this afternoon to talk about how we are integrating this complex international, national level growth into our local communities.
Thanks, Courtney. The Department of Commerce is a variety of entities that are under one umbrella, and we have the Economic Development and Finance Division. We have the Division of Community Services, which you were talking earlier, we heard about the Renaissance Zone. That's a program that goes through the Division of Community Services along with the Community Development Block Grant funding. We have tourism and marketing, which fits under a lot of opportunity for North Dakota, because if they don't know about us one way or the other, sometimes it's hard for them to find us. And so even though we have great coverage, with the work that has been done in the Bakken and with UAS and through our technology sectors, tourism does play a key role. But one thing that I think everybody has on their mind, no matter what division or what business you are running or where you operate, or even if you like to eat at fast food, is workforce. And so we are lucky to have Katie Ralston here, who is the Division Director for the Workforce Development. And I'll have her introduce herself and give a little bit of an overview of workforce, and we'll go into some of the future programs in a little bit.
Well, thank you, Maria, and good morning. Like Maria said, my name is Katie Ralston, and I have been with the Department of Commerce for about a year and a half. I joined around the same time as Josh and Courtney, and so we're all kind of newbies here, but I think share a passion and a deep hunger to really understand these content areas and work with the people of North Dakota. I'll touch briefly on the division itself, but then I'll also talk about the work of the North Dakota Workforce Development Council. So first, our division is in kind of a unique position. We do have some programs that really help workforce development in the state, but we are one of several agencies that touch workforce development. So some of the areas that we focus on within Commerce are work-based learning. We have programs to support apprenticeship and internship opportunities to help create talent pipelines for employers across the state. We also have a grant program that supports volunteerism. We have the federal AmeriCorps program housed within Commerce, and we also have re-energized our relocation efforts. And so we have kind of a concierge desk where we get a lot of people from around the country reaching out to us because they're interested in moving to North Dakota, but they don't really know where to start. They don't know where to go. They don't know what opportunities are here. And so we have someone that works one-on-one with them to help understand the part of the state they want to be in, the industry that they're working in, and connect them with opportunities and people within these communities to help bring them to the state. I also mentioned the Workforce Development Council, and I have the great pleasure of serving as the director of that board. Although the Workforce Development Council is a federally mandated state workforce board, every state in the country has to have one, North Dakota was actually ahead of the game in creating this board. It was started more than 20 years ago by Governor Schaefer, and at the time it was meant to provide industry perspective into the work that we were doing at the state level. And now we still continue to have 51% of our board members represent private industry. We also maintain diverse geographic representation so that we have perspectives from all across the state feeding into the work that we're doing. In addition to that, we have trade and labor represented, as well as education. We have K-12, career and technical education, higher ed, all represented on the board, in addition to other state agencies that serve populations with barriers to employment. So those who maybe have been displaced from their work, individuals with disabilities, or the incarcerated population. So the overarching themes that we focus on with this board are earlier and more diverse career exploration and addressing the technical skills gap, removing barriers to employment, occupational licensing reform, and recruitment and retention of North Dakota workers. Now, our role isn't maybe to fill the one opening that the store on Main Street has available. Our role really is to develop statewide initiatives to be more strategic in our work and forward thinking to figure out how we can not only fill the 16,000 jobs that we have available today, but how do we continue to create a pipeline of talent that will fuel our workforce system throughout the future. So thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be in Williston. I've had the great opportunity to spend a lot of time in this community throughout the last 15 or so years. So being back here is really exciting to not just see the growth, but to also hear about what's to come. So thank you.
She took advantage of being in Western North Dakota and got to go through, I think, a bakery yesterday. And so I don't know, not a bad job if you can get it to be able to go through and, see how they're doing. But that's part of workforce too. I'm going to take advantage of having the microphone and talk a little bit about community development. We have just hired 2 brand new community developers, one in the eastern part of the state and one in the western part of the state, whose main focus is to support communities. As mentioned, Main streets are really critical in every town. I don't care what size you are. That grocery store, if you don't have a grocery store, it's really difficult to keep your town open. If you don't have support for vibrancy, parks, good places to live, it's hard to recruit that workforce to work at that grocery store to keep your town open. And so we are reaching back out again, and it's super excited to have 2 new people on staff with a lot of experience. I've been really we interviewed amazing people who want to live and work in North Dakota. So it's been fun to capture that energy. And so I want to highlight, we will be having different types of online events throughout the summer, but then we're going to get back together next fall and be part of your community, along with the Main Street Summit, which is going to be in West Fargo this year, to highlight their infrastructure and learn from them. Of course, it'll be online, so if you don't want to travel, you can sure come on over. But I have a couple questions to start off with for a few of the panel members, but I want to make sure I save time for you to ask those questions that's burning on your brain, or challenge us with what we should do next. I think that's the biggest opportunity we have today here, is to hear from you what needs to be done in the state, from the Department of Commerce, from workforce, from tourism. How do we help you move forward also? So I'm going to start with Josh. Josh, your title has finance in it, economic development and finance, and you came from that world. Can you share a few of the programs Department of Commerce works both independently with and in cooperation with local and state banks?
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about different financing programs and understanding who offers what and how it fits to individual businesses. So hopefully I can provide some context on that. I actually ended up at Commerce in a roundabout way. I was appointed to be on the board of directors for the North Dakota Development Fund, and I served on that board for a little over a year, and I continually advocated for us to push the envelope, to the point where when I got a phone call from then Commissioner Comer, I thought she was going to ask me to step off the board because I was disruptive. And instead she said, you know, Josh, if we created a position that really just reimagined how we look at financing from the state perspective, would you be interested in that? And I think I said no 5 times. And then I eventually looked at it and I said, no, this could actually be really interesting and really fun for a state that I love to, you know, propel it forward. Well, how do we, you know, take what we've done for the last 30 years and say that was, when these things were established, that met a market need in, you know, 1985. Our market has changed. So how do we relook at that? So that's how I entered the Department of Commerce. And so when we look at it, any business goes through essentially a financing continuum. There's the real early stage idea. We have a program called the Innovate ND that's, you know, $40,000. It's a proof of concept, essentially. Is this idea worth pursuing or not? That is grant money. So that's to foster, you know, new innovation at a really low risk. There's some educational components provided with that. That's to get kind of new ideas off the ground for people that aren't sure whether the idea is worth pursuing or not. From there, the legislature actually had some really incredible foresight, not this biennium that's coming to a close, or this last legislative session, but the one prior, where they established a program called the LIFT program. And this was for IP commercialization in the state, and essentially was high risk, high impact capital that wasn't just incrementally moving things forward. This was going to be big leaps and bounds forward of creating new big industry and big innovation for the state. And so that was a $15 million program that was administered, I would say, very effectively over the last biennium. We recruited the former head of GE Capital, all of these incredible investment minds to serve on this investment committee, and funded a lot of really interesting projects. And the legislature, this last biennium, or this last session that we just completed, had the investment, they felt that we were good stewards of those dollars because that program was funded again. So now, come July 1, another $15 million will be available for the LIFT program. And so that's maybe the most advantageous financing in the state of North Dakota outside of grants, which there are few of. It's 3 years of 0 payments, 2 years of interest only at 2%, and then in year 6, it converts to the rate. So the reason for that is to kind of bridge that valley of death that businesses go through to, you know, say we're not going to put cash flow shortages on a company that's supposed to be growing and expanding. We'll think about it 5 years down the road when that IP's been commercialized, revenues are coming back from it. So certainly we would love more Western North Dakota deal flow, especially in the energy industry. I mentioned before